Everybody, welcome back to another episode of Fix Your BS, where BS stands for, you guessed it, belief systems. We also like to talk about 5 major pillars of life in this program: relationships, business, health, belief, and money. And so we're going to talk a little bit today about some of those different pillars, because if you get all 5 of those pillars right, guess what? Your life is absolutely amazing, and you deserve your life. You deserve to have your life be an amazing life. You shouldn't settle with having a mediocre life, which is what most people do. I think that's the biggest travesty in our society, is so many people settle. Today we have an amazing guest. He is a strategist, he is a speaker, he is an author, and he is a coach. And this is Dr. Ty Richardson today. He's going to tell you some stories and some tips and some things to improve your life in multiple areas. Dr. Ty, thanks for being here. I appreciate you.
Thanks for having me, Greg. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, we got 2 doctors on the program, Dr. Greg, Dr. G, Dr. Ty, and we're going to have a great conversation. So tell everybody a little bit, like a little synopsis of your history and some of the things success-wise, and then we'll kind of bridge the gap on some of the things you've learned along the way.
Okay, will do. So, I was born in Trinidad and Tobago to a family of entrepreneurs. My both parents were entrepreneurs. So I did the only logical thing when I became of age, and I decided not to be an entrepreneur. I began my career in corporate with American Airlines, and I spent 14 years climbing the ladder until I held a senior position in Europe and Asia before I decided to give it all up and go to Silicon Valley and try my hand at entrepreneurship for the first time. And because it was the first time, I went super big instead of trying something small and tried to build a social network. Well, that was my first failure, but I learned how to fail fast and fail forward, and did a number of other projects that were successful subsequent to that. One of them landed me in the Caribbean, where I was a digital nomad, and I built a great marketing and events agency, only to realize that I'm not built to live in the Caribbean, even though that's where I was born, and came right back to the US, where it was a lot more fast-paced and productive of a life. Got back to the US, had another successful jaunt at entrepreneurship, and pivoted quickly into teaching people what I had done well and what I had done poorly, and became a coach. And that's where I've spent the last 4 years of my life, is teaching other people what to do and what not to do, while still running a few businesses on the side. Didn't get that entrepreneurship blood. And now I run a community of entrepreneurs around the world.
That is fantastic. Tell me the name of the community. Let's make sure everybody knows what that community is.
Sure. It's the Advanced Innovation Society, and we enroll entrepreneurs and business leaders who are beyond their startup phase, and are looking for their group, their tribe that they can grow strategically with. We're not a networking group. We're not where you come and you exchange business cards, where you come and exchange strategy and collaborate and get visibility and really elevate yourself and your business to the next level.
Yeah, and you guys can also check out Dr. Ty on his Instagram page, which is dr.ty official, dr.ty official. Also, we'll have his Facebook, LinkedIn, all the other links, as you know, in the show notes, as always. So Ty at the advancedsociety.com. That's also going to be in the notes. I love that, because I always tell people, your network is your net worth. I didn't understand that for the longest time. The people that you hang around on a regular basis, that you discuss things with, will really shape your viewpoint in life. So what made you get the inspiration to say, I would like to get more people around me like this, so we can help each other grow and expand, not just financially, but in our own rights, individually, in our minds? And what made you get that inspiration?
So the concept of community has always been the hallmark of my success. When I was first employed with American, and I got a job at 23 to oversee our branch operations for the credit union, I took on that job not knowing anything about banking, but I did a good job enough to where 2 years later, they asked me to go to headquarters at the age of 25 to take over business development for the credit union. Now, I didn't do business development. I had no idea about business development. So what I did is I went out to the community and I built my first organization. I got other business developers who were in charge of their credit unions in a room and said, let's collaborate on how we can build a community and an industry and really change the way that credit unions are perceived. And that to this day still exists. And it showed me that people want to collaborate, they want to connect, they want community. So from that, a year later, I tried my hand at starting what's called an employee resource group within American. And it was the first time that we had resource groups by segments. So if you were, for example, women, or if there was a resource group for Asian Americans, and the company used those to kind of test products and look at markets, but there was no resource group for young professionals. And I thought, you know what, at the age of 25, I'm in the room with a lot of my peers who are significantly older. There should be some sort of support system for young people as they're coming in to help them resource and climb the corporate ladder. So we started a resource group. 100 people attended the first meeting, and we created this group called Generation Now, which supported young people as they climb the corporate ladder within the company itself. And that just showed me, again, people love collaboration, they like community, they like their network. And so I went on to build a number of different communities just like that. But the pivotal one for me was when I was in Europe. I was working again for American. I was in a new country, new job, new society. And for me, it was like, how do I acclimate and acclimate fast? What I wanted to do was go to networking events. I went to a few networking events. They were really difficult to navigate. I couldn't see myself networking with those people. They were not my people. They were not my tribe. So I did the logical thing and I created one. I said, you know what, instead of me going out to them, I'm going to bring them to me. And I studied the art of networking. And there were two things that I learned. One, people who are introverted, who deserve to network as well, can benefit from their biggest fear is the fear of rejection. So they can benefit from some form of facilitation, some form of an activity that will allow the guards to be lowered so that they can interact without that fear of rejection. And so we designed these really immersive networking events that allowed people to come into a room and, your name tag might say, Dr. Greg from Paris, my name tag might say Dr. Tai from France, and you would have to work the room to find the country that belonged to your city. And it gave you a reason to talk to people. It gave you a reason to introduce yourself. It gave you a reason to connect without that fear of rejection. Similarly, once you did that, we would reward you with like a cocktail making class or a free drink or something like that. So you were incentivized to do it. We also put in the room people whose only job it was to get to know you for 2 minutes, get to know me for 2 minutes, and then make introductions. So you didn't feel the pressure of having to walk up to somebody if you didn't want to. That model of facilitated networking, we grew. And that's what I went to Silicon Valley to try to turn into a social network, which was not a good idea. Probably should have stuck to doing events. But I learned quickly that my skill and my art was that it was doing events. And so we went back when I became a digital nomad, we did that same thing. And that's how we scaled quite rapidly. So, the secret of facilitated networking events, immersive experiences, and people doing the work for you. So fast forward to where we are today. What inspired me to get into this community was after building over 11 different networking organizations and communities throughout my career, I wanted to do one that was going to incorporate all of the things that I had learned and put people in the room, regardless of what the content was, put people in the room who can understand, build, and benefit from the concept of community. And it took understanding, what they're looking for, what their needs are, and then translating it into a digestible format. So today, within the Advanced Innovation Society, what I do is we give people facilitated networking in the form of a mastermind. And so they come in, they get a question. This question, they work in small groups, and they answer the question as it relates to their business. What's unique about this approach is that it forces them to work on their business. If you're stuck as the CEO, as a business person, as the leader, you're constantly going to the data. You don't have time to step out and look strategically at the business. And if you do, you're asking yourself the vanity questions, or you're asking yourself the questions, not the hard and difficult questions that will move your needle forward, but the where am I now questions and what do I need to do next? And so by creating these masterminds, these facilitated masterminds, people are now forced to answer a question they may not have asked themselves. One of the questions we had the other day was the dark side of business. How are you handling clients who are not paying, who are asking for refunds, who are disputing the contracts, who are late all the time? And it forces people to start thinking, okay, maybe I should have a late fee. Maybe I should have some sort of penalty. Like, what are the things in my business that I'm not paying attention to because I'm just treading water, or I'm just staying in that business mode, and then from there, it's about doing it in the online world and doing it in the offline world and making sure that people aren't just living in Zoom boxes because we've post the COVID era where they got comfortable with the screen, but they're actually back into the human element. They're actually putting the human into human beings. One of the things that I subscribe to is the Masterclass series. And I was listening to Indra Moody the other day, the former CEO of PepsiCo, and she was saying, megatrends are things that we all need to do as business people. And there are two specific megatrends that I think potentially impact what we're doing. And one is that concept of technology. As Gen Z move up in the world, we're going to be more technological. Let's face it, they're a highly technical generation. We're seeing it with AI, we're seeing it with the metaverse. They are going to be part of our lives. But the other thing is we also need to make sure that we're human and that the human is still part of our interaction. And that human part becomes now the competitive advantage, right? 30 years ago, the human side of things was the norm and technology was supplemental, hence the reason for me trying to start a social network. However, where we are now, technology is now taking over and humanism becomes the competitive advantage. So I think that the community I have now, those are the things that I'm focusing on.
No, wow, that was a lot of info, So I'm going to break a couple of those things down first. So have you ever heard the phrase collaboration is the new currency? Have you heard that phrase?
I have heard that before, yes.
Yeah. And I really love that because it is so true. When you look at networking, your network is your net worth. If you look at collaboration means that you can get multiple people with the same mission or vision for a organization or a company, and it moves the needle faster because you have this congruency where two minds make a third mind, that mastermind type of environment. And people don't realize that masterminds have become kind of a, this overused term, come to my mastermind. But if you find the right one, and you mentioned it a couple times, find your tribe, the people that you vibe with. How do you know if it's your tribe? The ones that you can throw ideas out there and everybody's like, yeah, and not, yeah, but. If you have everybody saying yeah, and around you, then you know you've got your tribe because they're cheering you on. If they say yeah, but, they're just trying to stop you. So that's a really simple way of learning or figuring out if you got your tribe. So who do you look for when you want people to come to you and join this tribe? Who is that type of person that you would want to see in that in your organization?
So again, what I've learned in the decades of building these things is that the thing that makes up the people, the avatar that makes up any community, regardless of mine or otherwise, really have three things about them, right? Number one, they're hungry for growth. They're looking to advance. They have a desire for wanting more. Number two, they have the same mission, right? Now, that doesn't mean that they want to make money or they're in business. They have a mission to do better. They have a mission to meet other people. They have a mission to socialize. Depending on the group, they have a mission to travel. They have a mission to identify a better mindset. Whatever the case is, there's a commonality with mission. And number three is they have a desire to connect, right? You might have a mission and you might have a desire for growth, and that might be enough. But guess what? Go take a course, go study a coaching program. But if you have a desire to connect, that's when you join a community. If you understand that your strength is X and you're missing Y and Z, and instead of going to learn Y and Z, you join a community where Y and Z exists and you collaborate, those are the people that we're looking for. Those are the three things that will make any community successful.
That is great advice, first of all. There's a lot of people that have started communities, but they really don't understand those, hungry for growth or desire to grow. Is paramount. And like I said earlier, we were talking before we started recording, where I believe that the biggest travesty, that is the biggest lie that is sold in our country and our society, and is that people end up settling because they tell themselves the lie that it's hard, or that they're not good enough, or they're not worthy, or it'll never work out, and they just tell these lies to themselves, and then they give up and they settle and they say, well, this is good enough, and then they go to a job that they hate. And I'm not saying that you should always do stuff that is just so fun and exciting and always have to, because there are things in any business or any growth trajectory that are going to be hard. So, but what you want to do is you want to be a majority of the time excited and elated and like, ooh, I expect good things to happen, and I'm looking forward to the growth that I'm going to experience. So, tell me about some of the experiences that, you've seen as far as like people's journeys, even maybe your journey a little bit on your own path to success, because you did take some risks and you were like, well, I failed, but really you learned from it. So I would look at that as be like, oh, I did this thing and I know that wasn't my thing. If you didn't do it, you wouldn't know it wasn't your thing, right? So
100%, 100%. So, I mean, listen, I've had more downs than ups in life. My whole pivot away from American was because, I was given 2 years of flight benefits and pay, and I thought, okay, I'm gonna go spend 2 years and go right back in. And then, I went right back in, and there was no American, right? The people who were running the show at the time were no more because of the U.S. Airways merger. So that changed the whole trajectory as to my path forward. I was stuck in entrepreneurship, which was a good thing. but I raised money. I built a social network. We did not get the hockey stick curve because we were one of many people building a social network at the time. And I had to answer for the money that I raised, and I had to pay it back, which I did. Because the one thing that I learned is how to pivot, and how to pivot fast, because nobody's going to come save you. You are your own hero. You've got to figure it out, and you've got to figure it out fast. And so, after we didn't get the hockey stick curve and we didn't build the social network, we became a product developer. Had we built products before? No, but I just went through a whole year of building a social network that didn't work. So I had some technical skill, hired a team, and we got that contract. It was 10 months of building a product, building an app. And guess what? In the 10th month, we didn't know it, but no more contract done, because the guy who was responsible didn't fiscally manage the money effectively. So our contract ended, and now I had to find a way to replace $15,000 in the paychecks for people on my team. Again, you pivot real fast. Figured it out, solved the problem, began working with another company who brought us in to consult and manage their transition from being a publication to a social network. What they didn't tell us at the time is that they only had a 4-month runway of capital. So guess what? 4 months came, and once again, the cash runs out, and we had to pivot fast. So all of these were just lessons in my early stages of entrepreneurship. It did not go smoothly. A lot of pivots took place, but then we found solid footing. We built something, and how we built it was because, one, we were passionate about it. Two, we continued to learn along the way. And we continue to figure out, okay, look at the patterns, look and identify what worked, what didn't work, see if there are things that we can reproduce and things that we need to adjust and get rid of. All of these were the learning mechanisms, and we studied it, and we got bigger and better. And by the end of that 3-year period, we were working with Coca-Cola, with Microsoft, with the film festival. It was a successful outcome. And for other reasons, came back to the US, again, not designed to live on an island. So in coming back to the US, pivoted again and learned about finance. I'd done finance in the past in a different capacity, but figured out exactly what the opportunity was and how we could serve the market. All of this to say that it's never a linear path. I believe that life is made, it's like an undulating topography, right? There are ups and ups where you cannot just rest on your laurels and celebrate, but you have to learn what got you up there, and downs. When you're going down, or when you're at the bottom, understand why you're there. And again, use it as a learning opportunity to say, okay, what landed me here? What do I not need to reproduce again? One of the key things for me in my career was this concept of Gallup's Strengths Finder. And that's why I became a coach. I looked at my career and I studied it, and I realized when I was at my high, I leaned into my strengths. I knew who I was, I knew who I was not, and I leveraged my resources around me. The people, the technology, the assets, everything that I couldn't do. I didn't do it myself, I leveraged it. When I was at my lowest, it's because something else about that opportunity enticed me, whether it was the country or the pay or whatever, and I did not lean into my strengths. I took the opportunity and I just did it for the fascination of it, and not because it was who I was or who I was meant to be or who I could lean into. And so because of that, I was at a low. And so when I became a coach with the understanding that I'm going to show people how valuable it is to understand and be self-aware, and how to lean into that self-awareness, supplement your shortages, but focus on that. That's what's going to make you great. And since then, I'm tailing on the top end of this funnel now. So it's working.
That's fantastic. And there's like 5 things that I've heard you say repeatedly throughout this conversation, and I think there are 5 things that we should really take note of. One of the things is being able to pivot. And if you own a business, you have to be able to pivot. Well, how do you know when to pivot? Well, that's the evaluation side. You've said evaluate a few times. You got to evaluate all the data and the information, and so that way you can make informed decisions. But I love that you're talking about figuring it out. There's a solution to every problem. And you also said you're solving a problem. You're just, look, I'm looking for the solution. I'm solving this problem. It's not a detrimental thing. It's not going to tear me down. It's just when you look at it as like, ooh, this will be a fun problem to solve, you have a different energy and different, coherency about it, as opposed to, oh, I got this major problem. Oh no, like it just depends on how you focus on it. And you've said, I'm solving a problem so many times in a way that's like, lighthearted, which is the way it should be. And then you hired a team. You've mentioned hiring a team multiple times. My specialty, I consult small businesses that are more regionally based. They're service-based businesses. And I consult them because I owned a business. I say owned a business. I owned a self-employment operation is what I owned, where if I left, the business shut down. And so what I help people do is I help basically small regional service-based businesses. I help the owner hire teams. I help them understand how to implement operations, standard operating procedures, KPIs, look at the data, evaluate. So I'm totally digging what you're talking about. I really love that you're bringing these 5 things out. So hire a team, evaluate the numbers, pivot, figure it out, and just work on solving problems. Be solution oriented. I love all of those things.
Yeah, 100%. And that's it's a lot of reframing. People look at something and they say, oh my God, woe is me. But you said it before. It is, what is this going to teach me? What have I learned? Like why has the universe put me in this position? And what do I walk away from? Do I have regrets? There are things I wish I had done differently. There are things I wish I hadn't done. But if I look back on it now, I cannot say that I would be here today and I wouldn't have the success I have now had I not gone through those things, right? Those things.
But that's the contrast of life. That's the contrast of life. How would you know that you're in the light or the dark if you didn't have the contrast of both of them?
Yes.
Like the hard things, the things that you go through that you're so confused or you're uncertain about, that's teaching you something. And I love that you're talking about looking at things that occurred and you're like, what can I learn from that? We talk about that all the time. What can I learn from that? In fact, my book, Fix Your BS, I talk about some of the things that you're actually saying. I always say in that book, I talk about the principles of life. The principles are the same in the box. I just wrap it in a different, colorful paper than other people, in the fact that I have different stories, but the principles don't change. I also love that you talked about the universe. Like, the universe gives you, if you want courage, it puts you into situations where you can develop courageousness, or develop courage. You don't just get it like a magic wand. And so that's why I love that you're talking about these trials and tribulations. Like, man, what am I learning from this? How is it helping me grow? And you're looking at it from a positive standpoint of like, this is going to be exciting. Do you know what you're doing? No, I have no idea, but it's exciting because I'm going to learn something.
Yeah. I mean, Greg, the reality is like every job that I got, save for the last 2 that I've prepared for, I didn't know what I was doing. I got promoted into a job without a skill set that I had learned. But the answer is always yes. And I will learn how to do it. And I will employ the people around me who know how to do this. And I will tap into their resources. One particular strategy I had when I got into overseeing call centers across Europe and Asia Pacific for American is I had to figure out how to transition our call center operations, how to transition our telephone lines and restructure this. I'd never done telecoms before in my life. But here's this big multinational corporation saying that's your job. And so what I did is I made a list of 8 telecom providers, from the one I wanted to work with to the one I didn't want to work with. And I started at the bottom and I said, can you give me a quote and a scope of what this would take? And they would give me a quote and a scope of what it would take. And then I would go to the one just above them and say, okay, so here's what I'm thinking. This is the scope and here's how much I think it would cost. And I would make all the way up to number 3. And I was fully educated on the process. I now knew everything about that. I could speak the lingo. I knew the quotes. I knew why the quotes existed. And when I got to 3, 2, and 1, I can articulate myself effectively. So problem, translate, convert the telecom center solution, learn along the way until you know what you're doing, and then you do it well. And so there's all you have to do is reframe it. I could have gone and said, I don't know how to do this. This is, give me another job. But I figured it out. I saw it, I saw the opportunity, and I figured it out.
And that's funny. It is how you frame it. If you look at something and see it as an opportunity, it's the direct opposite of looking at something like your mind will open to all the possibilities of the opportunity, as opposed to saying, well, I don't know how to do that. Now you have the opposite, whatever the opposite of an opportunity is. I don't even know. It's not even my vocabulary. It's just your mind shuts down. It doesn't give you the option for growth. It literally just stifles your creativity. And so I love that. And it's very rare to find, honestly, Dr. Ty. I mean, it's so many people are so negative and down about their life. Listen to the language they use.
Yeah.
You talk to the average individual, which is why masterminds and groups and things like this that you're talking about, and joining, organizations like the Advanced Society like you have, it's so important, especially if you're willing to grow and wanting to grow, is because the average individual you talk to, they will tell you what you can't do because of what they believe they can't do. And they're going to try to convince you that you can't do it because they can't see themselves doing it, but it has nothing to do with you. You want other people around you going, yeah, man, absolutely. In fact, no one that is farther ahead than you, that is more successful than you, will tell you that you can't or shouldn't do something unless by your growth, you will affect their position, that you will become a threat to them. That's the only time. But for the most part, they are going to be like, yeah, you should work towards better. You should do more. You should be more. You should learn more. You should read more. Absolutely. You should become more, because that's what we're here to do.
So interestingly enough, Greg, so 2 points on this. One, the people who tell you no the most or you shouldn't do it are usually people you know. Right? They're usually people who are familiar with you that are projecting their limitations on you. They couldn't do it. They didn't do it. They didn't know how to do it. They would have liked to do it, but they're limited by it. So they're going to tell you not to do it. And justifiably, they may do it out of risk or concern, but it's their risk. They're imposing their limitations on you. They have no idea how much risk thought you've put into this and how much you've mitigated, but they're just coming, no, that's a bad idea. You're going to lose so much. No. And they have no qualification to say that. That's number one. Number two, I'm rereading the book by Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. And, I read it before I go to bed, and chapter at a time. And one of the things I read last night is the concept, believe it or not, back in the 1910s, 20s, 30s, they were talking about the mastermind stuff. And they were talking about it because it was one way to not just leverage your knowledge, as the book says, because you're now in a room with other people who can supplement what you know, but it's about the energy. It's about the psychic nature of connecting with people who are all energy driven to succeed, just like the way you are. And if you surround yourself, people call it proximity is power. If you surround yourself with people who are moving forward, who are driven, who are ambitious, who are motivated, you can't help but become successful.
It's so true. And in that book, there's really three major things. So the mastermind, it talks about creating a third mind from two minds. So you take two minds and you actually create a meld between both of those to create a third mind that will download information from the universe and all of that. The other two things are desire and focus. And I think one of the big problems in today's society with social media is the shiny object syndrome, which is basically the opposite of focus. And you mentioned it earlier, knowing who you are and knowing what you want is how you create that desire. Then you focus on getting the result, and you will not stop until you get that result. So therefore, you can never fail. And I love that book. It is a classic, and a lot of other books that I love are kind of offshoots or used that as a reference. But it's really that simple. And I think we get caught up in the confusion of this world with all the things that come at you, all the advertisements and people and, your social media accounts and all these digital things that pop into your face. They distract you. I think it's a tool, if you want to look at it from a spiritual aspect, it's a negative tool to distract you from your true calling, because you're not focused and you don't pay attention to what your desire actually is.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on that? I know it's kind of deep, but
No. Listen, it's one of three. So there are a few books that have made my career what it is, right? And Think and Grow Rich is one. The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle is number two, and then The 4 Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss is number three. And they speak to me because it's a mindset, right? The Power of Now is a mindset, and Think and Grow Rich, I think, applies to that mindset. So if you can focus on where you are today instead of what has happened and what's going to happen, you can action today. Right. And then if you can use today to surround yourself with people who can supplement your knowledge and put you in that space of energy where you're focused on desire and you're focused on persistence, you're going to be successful. And then Tim Ferriss just tells you shortcuts on how to get everything done. So I believe spot on in what you said. It's the reason I'm rereading it. I think that it's a lot of mindset. It's a lot of making sure that, one, you're committed to the cause, right? And you know what that goal is, and it's clearly defined for you. Two, knowing your role and part you play in getting to that result and who you need to supplement that. And three, understanding the persistence needed to get to that goal, pivoting. So the goal stays the same, but the strategy moves. But you will always get to the outcome. So those three things, I think, are what will always give you the success as long as you have the right frame of mind for it.
man, that is awesome. And honestly, I think that's like one of the best closing statements you could make, because that's really what people want. And people don't realize that, you want things because you believe that in the achievement of those things, you will feel better. You will be happier. And maybe you will for a moment. But if you switch that and say, I believe happiness is in the work toward the result, then it opens you up to being able to shift the end result and pivot and say, well, my original destination is not really where I want. I'm in the middle of this now. I can pivot and change that destination and still be just as happy as and content in doing that, because it's movement towards something that's greater than where I currently am. And I love that you're bringing that into light. I really do.
Yeah, everybody has a journey and everybody's journey is unique. And here's the thing, when you talk to people and they give you advice and they tell you what you should do and what you shouldn't do, they're on a different journey to you. They don't know the full background scope and what you've been through, what you're doing. So I love to tell people, like, everybody who gives you advice, take it, but you have to critically think about it. You can't just take something that somebody says and repeat and do it the way they said to do it. Apply your knowledge, apply your intellect, apply your experience, apply your goals, apply your desired path, the goal, the plan that you made to get there, and nuance what they've said, right? A lot of people depend on their coaches and their mentors. And having been a coach, I can say I've given advice, but the intent is never for me. I see you once a week for an hour. I don't know what's happening in the other hours of the week that you're not with me. So take the advice I give, critically think about it, apply it to whether it works or doesn't work. But ultimately, back to what we just said, know your goal, be persistent on your goal, know your strengths and your weaknesses, apply your community to support those strengths and weaknesses, and get it done.
Wow, man. Dude, Dr. Ty, fantastic. I really appreciate you being here. Everybody check out theadvancesociety.com. That's the website. You can also look at all of Dr. Ty's, his Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. We'll have links to all these things below. If this sounds like you are interested, then reach out to his team, because they will they'll get you acclimated to what that tribe looks like. And maybe if it's something that's going to help you, maybe join that. Everyone has their own. And this is why I love collaborating with people like you, Dr. Tyus, because, I have a lot of people in my groups and I have a lot of one-on-one clients and those type of things as well. But I love, because sometimes people don't match 100%. And I'm like, you know what? There's some other people that I know that are really good that you should go check out. And a lot of times they'll find a better match for them in that. And I think that's really what you're supposed to do, is help people find what is best for them. So some really great pointers here. Everybody, make sure you share this episode with your friends, with your family, with other people around you, especially if you are one of the few that want to be business owners and entrepreneurs that have a different mindset than the average individual. Share it with other people that are like you, because that's how we are able to reach more people. There is zero cost for you to listen to this. The only thing we ask is that you pay it forward and send it to someone else. As you know, I'm Dr. Greg Persley, also known as Dr. G, and today was an episode with Dr. Ty Richardson with the Advanced Society, and he dropped some really great knowledge bombs for us and some really good stories as well. Until next time, as you know, I'm Dr. Greg with Fix Your BS, where we help you with your relationships, your business, your money, your faith or belief, and your health. And until next time, we are going to help you build your dream life on your terms. Thanks, Dr. Ty, for being here, and everybody, we'll see you soon. All right. Boom.